Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to RCI Mondays, and it's time for another One Make Championship, as is common. And we find ourselves in the Maserati Gran Turismo MC GT4, a car that needs no introduction. Very tricky to those of you that run ACC quite regularly. Of course, no traction control and no ABS in this. We are bringing you round two from Donington Park, 4.02 kilometers in length with 12 turns. I'm your lead commentator for tonight, John Dalton. Alongside me is Jesse Lee and a surprise Christian Stricker behind the cameras. And of course, next door to us, as always, the live stewards. Welcome, everyone.
Hello and welcome in, everybody, to the Maserati Cup. Round number 2 of the championship will get you up to date with everything that happened for round 1 of the season. But for today, round number 2 from Donington Park in the United Kingdom. Talking about a car that doesn't need any introduction. This track absolutely needs no introduction. One of the older tracks on the circuit. I would love to say I remember this place back when you would race through farm gates, but definitely don't. Not quite that old. Lovely track, lovely car. You're going to see a lot of action on the track tonight, John.
Yeah, super action-packed, hopefully, race tonight, as was kind of last week. Apologies for the missing stream. Some things didn't align, and we just couldn't make it happen. But we are back in your screens for round 2 as we jump on board with our very own Tim Ireland down in the AM class in the number 141. Rational Driving Brilliance team name, of course. Round the first turn of Redgate, and we now begin the descent down through the crane of curves. Turns 2, 3, switching back to the left, normally flat out on the left-hander before slamming on the brakes for the old hairpin. I say slamming on the brakes in a kind of cautious way. Of course, without the ABS, trail braking yourself into the old hairpin is going to be very tricky. We then begin the climb back up the hill once again under what would have been Starkey's Bridge through turns 5 and 6, now up to McLean's. Keep it tight into the right-hand side. Late apex, be very careful of the exit curb. It does fall away and can upset the car quite a lot as we now round over the blind crest essentially into Coppice. Long corner, right hand corner, feels like it drags on forever. You just want to get the power down as soon as you can to become the run down Starkey Straight towards turn 9 of the S's. Of course, Dunlop Bridge used to grace the track. Those of you old enough to remember, again, going back to Jesse Lee's point earlier on about the farm gates coming through. The S is looking very tidy. You've got to get a good run down to turn 10, which is the Melbourne hairpin. Of course, a great passing place if you can make it happen. Once again, on the brakes, be very cautious of the wheels locking up. Be sure you don't brake too deep and too late and run into the side of your opponent. Very easily to do. And we now come through the back of the pit lane. Old pit entry to the left-hand side there, still used, I believe, in some of the races for a shorter run to the pit lane. Round turn 11, which is Goddard's before the run down to the main straight. Tim Ireland, of course, first driver to set a time with a 1:38.687.
Representative time. We'll see how well that stacks up. I suspect that'll be somewhere in the middle of the grid by the time everybody comes around. But a 38.6, a decent first offering. Good enough to beat Foster there for the time being. Smith comes across the line in the 25, and now the 28 does as well, but Smith still quickest, a 27.692. The times will almost certainly continue to take a tumble. Kevin Boss, last week's winner in the AM class, his first ever RCI victory was last week at Silverstone, and he's looking to double it up today. 2 weeks, 2 wins. That would be incredible. Currently P2 by 9/100ths of a second. John, you mentioned the bridge, and it reminded me there used to be 2 pedestrian walkways around this racetrack that don't exist anymore.
Yeah, they did. There used to be Starkey's Bridge, of course, adjacent to Starkey Straight, and then, of course, the famous kind of half-cut Dunlop that runs, the arc over the back straight that is obviously Starkey Straight. So yeah, it's a bit weird for those of people that remember Donington in the kind of late 90s, early 2000s. It's, it looks very empty as we ride on board Kevin Boss looking down Starkey Straight. Normally it was about here where the bridge was, and it's just gone. So it's, crazy to think. And of course, you touched last time out on Kevin Boss's victory. Of course, we are running a Pro and Am split category. If you're wondering what is going on, of course, the pro drivers represented by the white backing to their number board, and of course the AM drivers, in quotation marks, should we say, represented by the red backing. So we give the AM drivers first shot of the qualifying, get the track nice and rubbered in for the pro guys to go out. And of course, Jesse, without the tyre blankets, it's a bit tricky to get these tyres kind of switched on in the shorter period of the qualifying.
Yeah, it really is, and you kind of have a lot of pressure because obviously you're in a GT4 car, and on top of that, you're going slower, of course, around the racetrack, and you don't get a full quality session, if you will. It is a shorter run, and just makes it a bit more drama-filled, these qualifying sessions. You ruin one lap, you run the risk of ruining a second lap, and then all of a sudden you have nothing left to defend yourself with. And I will say this, a lot of the pro drivers are paying attention to when the AM drivers are out there on the racetrack. They're doing that for several reasons. They're looking at trying to figure out what a representative lap time would be. They're trying to figure out what the grip level is, where some of the trouble spots may be. You can learn a lot from sitting in the pit lane, and that helps you whenever you get that out there on the track yourself.
Yeah, it certainly does. I mean, you know, if you've not been practicing as much, maybe you want to try and figure out how to drive this car and drive it fast. Of course, you can certainly watch the AM drivers. We say AM in a very loose sense. A lot of these drivers, you know, very experienced. Tim Ireland been racing with RCI for a considerable amount of time, and of course is the Monday League admin that kind of puts on this great show and these wacky car choices and kind of rule sets that he chooses, such as the Lamborghini Evo 2. The Lamborghini Huracan ST Cup that we ran just a couple of weeks ago, just a couple of months ago even, actually, with the no pit stop rule. So drivers, of course, not being able to refuel and run half and half. They were kind of destined towards the end of the race, essentially, on the fuel they started on. So, you know, Tim always throwing a spanner in the works, should we say, here at RCI. But it's always great to have a bit of variety, should we say, Jesse?
No, without a doubt it is. And I've been wanting to do a Maserati Cup for quite some time. It's awesome to finally see it getting done. You got here the number 11, the E-Sky liveried Maserati. They had a little bit of extra wheel spin. Keep in mind, no traction control, no ABS in these cars. So it's all done with feel through the wheel and the pedals. And they got a little wheel spin, but they still captured provisional pole from Kevin Boss, a 36.637 now the mark to beat.
Yeah, battle of the Dutchies towards the front at the moment with Van Zoofen and, of course, Kevin Boss in his homeland of the Netherlands. It's, you know, who is going to be the better man in this scenario? And Kevin Boss not too far away from that time entirely. So very competitive at the moment, even for the AM guys. You know, a little bit of a distance between the kind of top four, and then a big gap between, you know, P5 of Foster, 1 second off the top time at the moment. But we all know it's, you know, it's not where you qualify, it's how you run the race. And of course, with 1 hour here tonight, it's going to be very tricky indeed to keep this car kind of on the straight and narrow. Obviously minimizing any wheel slips and lockups that you may face with the ABS, and of course kind of trying to pick your way through the field and choose your battles very wisely at the same time, as we see Chris Carr coming out of the Melbourne hairpin there, wrestling the Maserati on the opposite lock. Of course, naturally aspirated engine in these cars means it's very peaky to kind of pick up the revs and pick up into the power band. You don't have to wait for that turbo to spool up before you get that kick of boost in the rear, and Chris Carr comes across the line. Small improvement there up into P5 with a 1:37.245, and I think he's got just about enough time to make another lap. I think the cutoff being, stand me if I'm corrected here, Jesse, 11 minutes before the AMs have to call it quits for the day.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're on a flying lap, though, those laps still do count. They will allow you to finish your lap. There will be pro cars on the racetrack there about that time, of course, but they will be literally on the opposite end of the racetrack, so no danger there at all. But if you're on a flying lap by that time, you will get to complete it. And we saw this last week. It will likely be this way this week. There will be some movement in that final lap. Somebody somewhere will get that last lap, mega lap, to gain lap time. And something strange already going on here today. The tire bale that sits at the S's, it's still there. It hasn't even moved yet.
Yeah, I'm sure when the pro guys get out, I'm sure that tire bale will be kind of punted into the atmosphere and very much deleted from existence on the inside. Dylan Smith, sorry, in the Blacksmith Racing Maserati. Nothing to be had there, calling it quits at the Melbourne hairpin after a big armful of oversteer on the exit. Chris Kahn, the number 104, opposite teammate Blacksmith Racing Maserati, once again, the 104 in comparison there, rounding through the last turn of Gollard's turn 11. Beginning his run to the line, of course, needs to hassle the car all the way to the line, and no small improvement there actually on the lap, but no improvement to be had in position. And just read a note in the chat, Jesse Lee, Dom Healy suffering with some stomach cramps tonight, so might not be able to see out the whole session, but was looking very competitive in practice.
Yeah, he was one of the drivers that came through the field in week number 1 and secured the 1-2 for Wild Things. And I was quite impressed with just how much drivability Dom was able to get out of that Maserati to secure that second place. It's unfortunate hearing he's feeling a little bit under the weather. He's going to give it a go, though. Going to give it a try, maybe, and we'll see if he's able to compete here tonight. Well, the AM drivers set on the lineup. Smith, Zufin, and Boss, you were top 3 in that category. It is now the time of the pros. The larger pro field out on the racetrack. Everyone filing out, trying to find their footing here on the siding lap. Les Stevenson, also known as the Fat Stig. Also, you would have heard him here live on RCI just yesterday, back inside the race car, looking to get another result.
Yeah, Les joining me for the broadcast yesterday on the 6 Hours esports series. Of course, if you didn't catch that or any of the action, definitely watch it back. It's very worth a watch. Very exciting battles right from the beginning all the way to the end. And, of course, big names in that one, featuring, of course, Williams, Veloce, SMP, Acetec, SimSports Visceral, and John Lacey Esports, just to name a few there. So championship really hotting up between those guys. But back to tonight, of course, Nico Kumpu, the first driver in the train, shall we say, the number 256. Nico, again, no kind of stranger to Mondays, another regular driver we tend to see alongside kind of Andy Boardman, Tom Shipston, and the greatest name in sim racing, of course, Matthew Kingston Lee. And, these guys all know each other very well, and we now ride on board with Nico Kumpu. So, Jesse, I'm going to leave this one to you.
Nico Kumpu coming across the line to start a lap. I didn't see any major stacking going on through the hairpins in the field, through Red Gate for the first time. A little tentative for my taste, but that might just be how he has to drive it. A little bit of correction exiting the corner. That is typical of tires not being up to temp, maybe trying to feed a little bit too much power through the tires, through old hairpin now. Very, very slow in comparison to what you would expect out of a GT3 car, but do bear in mind these are GT4s without any electronic aids. So coming up the hill, no extra drama, just a tiny blip of correction as we climb, still getting all of the curb there. Nothing going on out of the ordinary as we enter the final couple of corners here as the back straight and into the S's. That was a very nice corner through McLean's, and now down the back straight and into the S's. They call it the S's. I've always just called it the chicane, of course. Will we be clean through here? Yes, indeed. Kissing the apex and the curb, over the curb in some cases on both accounts, and through one of the hairpins here and onto Goddard's they will go. Nico Kumpu driving very measured here. I don't think he gave this lap everything he possibly had. This might just be a banker lap, but we'll see as they come through Goddard's for the first time. It looks like a decent lap. Probably won't be the quickest lap you see here today, John.
Yeah, of course, no tyre blankets, we said earlier on in the broadcast. So temperatures typically, from my short stint I did at Silverstone, took about 3 to 4 laps to kind of get in from really kind of leaning on the tyres and trying to get them switched on. It's a long old warm-up. So what you ideally want to do is fuel the car for the entirety of the session. Just pound round and pray that you catch the timer at the best time, of course, when you come to the end of the stint, when your tyres are kind of in that magic window where the pressures are switched on very well and the core temperature is there as well. As, of course, we see now Richard Phillips for the RPMS SimSport guys. Again, a regular bunch of people that tend to race in the Monday Championship. Normally see 3 or 4 cars, although I saw Matt Stevens had signed out from this round, so very unfortunate there. But Richard Phillips, round turn 11, begins his run to the line to set his provisional lap, and good enough for P19 with a 1:38.375. But as you said, Jesse, of course, the tyres still trying to come in. Drivers maybe trying to ease them into their window rather than, go hell for leather straight out the pits on cold under pressure tyres, and then kind of ruin the best of them before you get, of course, to your all-important flying lap at the end.
Well, I talked about Kumpu's lap, and I thought that maybe it was just going to be an average lap, but, well, they're P3 right now on the board. Dom Healy, the ill driver, currently on provisional pole with a 35.36. You got Jordan Daly in P2, Nico Kumpu third, and Jeremy Clarkson, I think, said it very best. Sometimes when a lap looks slow, it's really fast, and I would have to say that about Nico's lap. It didn't look particularly special or eventful, but maybe that was just the ticket. Has a little bit of line to go to get up there with the top runners. Andy Boardman from Grease Weasel Racing slots into P2 momentarily, but gets dropped down to third. Phillips with a 35.060 goes to provisional pole in the 26 car, and that is the new mark to beat. 3/10 clear of the field.
Yeah, Wild Things Racing looking very good indeed in both practice and, of course, the qualifying at the moment. Provisionally locking out your front row, although still just under 5 minutes to go. Still, anything can happen, and we might see a kind of curveball out of nowhere for one of the drivers. But just touching on your point about Jeremy Clarkson, of course, when it looks slow, it's actually very fast, and it's quite true of this car. As soon as you start trying to push it and lean on it, that's when you become kind of prone to mistakes, as we see Dom Healy there with a big drift through the last turn of turn 11 coming to the line. That's going to hamper his lap slightly. 1:35.330 on the board, closes the gap to his teammate ever so slightly, but still not enough to take away that pole position. But this is one of those cars where if you do kind of underdrive it, you nurture it, you coax it around a lot of the corners, you're very easy on the power and the brakes and the steering inputs. It's a very kind of gentle car to drive fast. The more you kind of push it and lean on it, the kind of more out of shape it becomes, and then you just end up with a really slow lap and a ruined set of Pirellis.
Yeah, one of the worst things you can do in a race car, and it doesn't matter what race car it is you can try too hard. Trying too hard, it makes you feel like you might be going faster, but in all reality, smooth is fast, and fast is, well, good. So doing anything other than being smooth is going to probably take your lap time, and well, you can see that very easily demonstrated in these machines. It is one of those kind of cars that takes a very steady hand, a very gentle foot, and you can absolutely get lap time out of these cars. Heck, Dalton, you and I have seen in GT4 competition proper here on RCI, we've seen the Maserati do amazing things around racetracks. At the Bathurst, for instance, a formidable opponent in the right hands around that particular racetrack.
Yeah, it's definitely got its kind of, strong suited track, shall we say, as we see Jordan Daly taking the kind of wide, I say esports line in quotation marks for his qualifying lap, because every single kind of esports orientated competition here at Donington, every driver takes that wide arcing line to get the maximum run down the main straight towards turn 1 to improve those ever so small kind of tenths of a second here and there to get themselves up. And you see a big drift there over the exit curve for Jordan Daly, well held on the Just Gamers car, the 197. But it is one of those cars that, even in the mix of the GT4 field, in the right hands, it can of course be a very quick car and very competitive. It's just a lot harder for the average Joe, shall we say, to pedal this thing round at a considerable lap time.
It really is the case, and we'll see what the improvements look like. Remember, Nico Kumpu set our first flying time, and this is their third or fourth circuit. That gets them back inside the top 10, 36.115, 1.1 off of the overall pace set by Phillips thus far. Dom Healy back to P2, Klaus Neiring in P3 for the time being. 3/4 of a second down, and all that tells me, partner, is there's time to be made out there.
Yeah, that there is always time to be made in the Maserati, of course. You kind of take a corner one way, the following lap you might take it slightly different, and you might find the different way works, and then it's just a case of kind of stitching the best of the worst together, essentially, to try and assemble a lap and Phillips, been watching him out of the window. He does kind of wrestle the car quite hard through some of the turns. Some of the turns he kind of slides through, and then other times he's very calm and composed. So it's all about mixing it, I guess, to create the best lap you can and kind of understand where this will be fast. And Martin Schaefer here for the Seaton Hybrid Investment Trust up into P3 with a very good lap time there of a 1:35.555. So, who can beat that? Just under a minute to go, Jesse. We're going to start seeing some of the fastest times we've seen in the session come through in the next minute.
You certainly would expect it, wouldn't you? Everybody absolutely going for it. You're going to see some drivers not go quicker, of course, because they're going to end up blowing their final lap. Dom Healy didn't do that. They are already back into the garage. A 34.815, the mark to beat for everyone. The closest is Harry Phillips from Wild Things Racing. They were 1-2 1 week ago. Could they potentially start where they left off at Silverstone? They are there currently, but will Phillips jump his teammate? Absolutely not. They will get one more attempt at it, one more lap, and no, they won't. Phillips has called it quits here in quali. The top two in the lane. Time expires, and everybody else scrambling, trying to make up time on their final lap.
Yeah, just having a quick look down the board, and Andy Boardman, I think, is looking fairly good on his lap before that run through the old hairpin. Lost a lot of time there, so not sure what happened on his fastest lap, but certainly that way was not the way to take the old hairpin as he begins to climb. Les Stevenson just ahead of him still on his lap as well. Les currently down in P14. These guys with about 0.6 of a second between them, so Andy might find himself buried in the back of Les if he's not all too careful come the end of this lap. And Boardman's time looking fairly neutral at the moment. And just looking down to Les Stevenson on the timing board as well. Still not a massive gain on the cards for Les either. So this kind of might just be a little bit of extra testing to see how the car is performing, and maybe even a little bit of slipstream to see if the the Maserati can gain anything even down the kind of short straights between each corner here at Donington. And Andy Boardman just about on the back there. Big wiggle from Les Stevenson, a little wiggle from Andy Boardman. And as we ride on board now with the 69 Greased Weasel Racing, braking for the last turn of Goddard's. Little two different lines there. We see Les on a much tighter line and drifts his way over into the pit lane. Andy Boardman nails the throttle towards the line, but I don't think it's going to be an improvement. It's not, just about off with a 1:35.920. And I think, Jesse Lee, we've got a few more stragglers coming through, but that has cemented your qualifying results here at round 2 tonight.
Sure has. Jordan Daly did pick up a considerable amount, put themselves back on the second row of the grid, P3, 7/10 out of the Wild Things grouping, but quicker than all of the rest there on that final lap.
Yeah, and of course, as always, between the qualifying and the race, while we have a little downtime, we do, of course, go through the championship standings. And it's a 1-2 at the top at the moment for the Wild Things Racing team. Harry Phillips leads his teammate Dom Healy there, 72 points to 58 on that one. Martin Lawrence bringing up the rear with 53. Klaus Nyring, we saw him quite far up the table during qualifying, but slipped down in the latter half with 48. Nika Kumpu with 44. Martin Schaefer with 40. Lucas Lichten with 37. Marco Badowski with 34. Andy Boardman in 9th with 31. And Jordan Daly rounds out your top 10 with 28 points. Moving now on to page 2, Matthias Thornberg in P11 with 25 points. Manso with 23 for the RPMS boys. Tom Shipston, Ground Zero Racing with 21. Matthias Aquadont with 19. Piotr Dominicus with 15. Alexander van der Voorde with 14. Richard Phillips, again, RPMS driver with 13. Ryan Ware with 12. Christopher Black with 11. And Daniel Martinez rounds out your top 20 in Pro with 10 points. And now moving on to the final page of the Pro Guys. Matt Stevens, again, an RPMS driver with 9. Matthew Kingston-Lee and Les Stevenson yet to score. And Martin Breuker, Chris Downing and Hogevane has signed out of the championship, indicated by the hyphen next to their points. Now,
coming up with the AM grid, Kevin Boss, 65 points with that maiden victory 1 week ago. Peter Varga, 58. Vander Velden in the top 3, 53 points. Dylan Smith, Marco rounds out your top 5. Tim Ireland, Chris Carr, Foster, Merchant, and Crombeen, the top 10. Cormac Quinn in 11th place has no points. The same with Dan, and nobody else is still entering in the AM Championship, unfortunately. Kerrigan, Marcos, and Brown have retired from the series.
As we now watch towards the grid now, of course, drivers just getting ready, just 2.5 minutes under on the countdown. Probably makes it an excellent time, of course, to thank you guys at home for tuning in to RCI TV, both, of course, now on Twitch and YouTube. So if you haven't already, headed on over to our Twitch channel. We would appreciate a follow and a couple of views on that as well, if you can. And of course, it does help us here with the kind of, the running of RCI, should we say. It puts us in the good net of the algorithm. And, of course, none of this would be possible without you guys at home, as Christian takes us on a small flight of Donington Park. Just want to take the time as well to thank our partners here at RCI, of course, in the form of AK Esports, beginning with, of course, need no introduction for the services they provide. Of course, provide us here with the server solutions we use at RCI for hosting all these wonderful events. If they do believe they can help you at all, do check out their link in the description below. Driver61.com. You can, of course, get 25% off your driver coaching by using our discount code in the description below, and heading on over to driver61.com. From full driving courses to one-on-one coaching, I'm sure they will have something that fits your needs there. And of course, Fanatec, anybody tuning in knows exactly who they are. They need no introduction again from us. And of course, we do have an affiliate link with Fanatec. You can check that out in the description below if you are looking to pick up any hardware, as we see the kind of cordoned off national circuit where, of course, the drivers don't go, indicated by the big blockade in the way. We do, of course, turn left onto the GP, and now bringing up the rear of the field with the drone. And last two partners, just want to thank, of course, digitalmotorsports.com, new to us here at RCI this year. They do offer a number of products and services, from virtual driving experiences, corporate events, an early driving program if you are near Mondello Park in Ireland, esports championships, driver training, sim components, and even complete sim rig solutions. Do check them out if you believe they can help you at all with your needs. And lastly, of course, Go Setups, formed to be one of the premium esports setup stores for all ACC needs. Their primary aim was to create setups for kind of all skill levels, whether you're esports ready or looking for a safer alternative. And featuring a plethora of esports stars on their team, you can be sure that the setup you choose has extensive hours behind it. Of course, check out the link in the description below once again for those guys. And just want to say, Jesse, I say this every time I promote them, they have a Jaguar pack. They've taken time to tame that car.
Yeah, they absolutely have. And I'm quite curious. I would love to hear from somebody who has the Go Setups Jaguar pack. I would love to see what that car is actually capable of. We know there are some racetracks where it's not a slouch. You take the Go Setups Jaguar setup around Monza, I reckon you could probably win in a pro field in that car.
Yeah, Monza was the circuit that did have the very strong bop on the Jaguar. I remember fondly of that, as Christian now flies the drone between the spectator area. Between the trees we go, out to the other side of the circuit, where the cars are now beginning to meander down to the old hairpin bright yellow car at the head of the field. Dom Healy, unfortunately, mentioned it in the chat earlier. He's suffering with some stomach cramps, so we'll see if he can last the hour. But if not, Harry Phillips hot on his heels for the Wild Things Racing team. These guys, more than likely, Jesse, I'd say, probably working together early on in the race, of course, not to kind of detriment each other's pace, maybe drill in some solid laps, pull away from the field, and then they can begin a bit of a battle between themselves if they like.
I just realized something about what Dom said. I misunderstood his message earlier. He did, of course, message in our chat like you said. He said he's having stomach cramps and he might have a Code Brown moment. He never said he was going to stop driving the car, John. What do you make of that?
Yeah, that's true. He said he may have a Code Brown moment, which kind of means I'm hoping
He never said he was going to step away.
he didn't. He's
That's
fully committed, I guess.
That's a race car driver right there.
That is, you know, Nicky Team is very famous for some of his Le Mans radio kind of jokey messages in the night to the team. So yeah, hopefully Dom Healy isn't, you know, radioing back to the Wild Things Racing about his Code Brown moments in the rig, and I'm hoping his rig is kind of protected if he does drive in a rig or, you know, a desk, whatever he's sitting in at the moment. I just hope it's protected from any Code Browns.
Hopefully he doesn't have one on the racetrack. Looking for a clean and green getaway. Silverstone was pretty clean 1 week ago. Nothing to complain about early on for the stewards. The chaos actually started from lap 2 onwards. A couple of sizable accidents that occurred from that point. But lap 1 was fairly innocuous, to be completely fair with you. But this is a completely different animal. The track is more than half as wide, and the speeds on some of these corners are going to be just a little bit higher. Who's your favorite to win today? Well, it's hard to look past the Wild Things Racing. They had a 1-2. They're in that configuration now. John Dalton, take us to the start.
Yeah, certainly so. Cars now gridding up 2 by 2, of course, coming down on to the main straight, waiting for the green flag to wave from the gantries. It's quite a late hold at Donington, as typically is, and an excellent getaway from the Wild Things Racing team at the front. Jordan Daly just about inches ahead of Dominicus, and looking down to the back of the field, we've got 3 wide. Matthew Kingston-Lee, Ryan Ware in there with, I think it's Tornberg in the alternate car as well. There is Jordan Daly. They all filter down through the crane of curves. Looking at the circuit map, we've got 1 car trailing at the back. Not sure who that is. We're going to have to catch up with that later on. Andy Boardman kind of in the mix of it at the moment. 2 wide. We've got a car off. We got a dab of the brakes from the car behind. I think that's Martin Lawrence possibly snuck in. I didn't even see him join the server. I didn't even realize he was here tonight. I thought he was way signed out of the event, as Klaus Naring kind of at the head of the field. Nico Kumpu off to driver's exit stage left into turn 7, and McLean's looking relatively clean. Pardon the pun, sorry, through McLean's. They go up to Coppice of turn 8. Klaus Naring coming under fire now from Badowski, and Andy Boardman and the Grease Weasel Racing kind of heading this next train of cars. But the Wild Things Racing guys look like they've made a clean getaway from Jordan Daly. Half a second to the good coming through sector 3, and the tyre bundle survived for the first half of the cars, but Andy Boardman takes a trip to the beach, straight line to chicane, and this allows, I think that's Martin Lawrence actually in the red, white and blue car, kind of connection loss racing colours, should we say. The red car, of course, being Badowski earlier on that we were casting there, is relatively clean again through the Melbourne hairpin. Not seeing many cars off on the sides of the road. The pit window opens just under 57 minutes to go, and we've not touched on the pit stop tonight, but I believe it's an open choice on the pit strategy. We need to take a minimum of 1 litre of fuel during the 57-minute pit window, leaving tyres completely up to the drivers. And it's tricky, isn't it, when you're this early on? We see teammates already fighting down the crane of curves towards the old hairpin. Dom Healy on the outside, and Harry Phillips goes through on the inside, makes the lunge towards the old hairpin. And this brings Jordan Daly now back into the shot. You've got to be very careful that Daly doesn't catch you, because if he does, look how close he is, Jesse. He's got a real good run up the hill at the moment.
Yeah, well, Phillips took the lead of the race, in fact, John, and then Dom Healy took it immediately right back again. But that has, of course, like you said, allowed Jordan Daly to close all the way back up. 3-car breakaway up at the front of the field. Keep in mind, there was 0.7 of a second between these 3 cars in qualifying, but this is race trim. This is full fuel load and all of that, so completely different scenario. Jordan Daly making the best out of it. The 2 teammates racing each other, and the Just Gamers number 197 involved as well. And looking further into the background, you can see the long snake of cars coming through the S's. One thing I can definitely say, Healy being passed up by Phillips there. They got very spicy as they entered the old hairpin a lap ago. There is no team orders over at Wild Things.
Now, Wild Things leaving their drivers completely to race each other, which is great to see. You know, sometimes the drivers get a little bit reserved on each other and don't quite go for moves that they would necessarily go for, as looks like Richard Phillips has run himself a little bit wide through Goddard, and this allows the door open for Les Stevenson and Van Zoofen on that one for an AM car getting involved in the mix as well. And we see it a lot of the time when Tim Ireland splits down the split one into pro and AM. The AM guys sometimes do give the pro guys a good run for their money.
Yeah, and it's absolutely frustrating if you're a pro car. I can tell you that as much, but you got to not think of it like that as a driver. It's a car. It's somebody you have to beat. It doesn't matter what their number placard indicates. It's a position. You have to treat them with respect. It's the same thing. If you're an AM and you're in the pro class, you got to not pay attention to what their number placard color is, and you've got to race them. You've got to race them with the same respect. But I will tell you, psychologically, it is a whole different ball game whenever you're intermingling the classes. We saw that a absolute ton in race number one. A little bit less so here today, but it's always going to be a thing here with these mixed class races.
Yeah, it looks like Lucas Lichten's made a move up there on Richard Phillips up into P14 of the pro class there for the Flat Out Racing team by Iris number 140. Again, great to see people putting in some custom liveries on a car. Of course, there isn't much picked, Jesse Lee. Somebody's had to sit here, skin a whole new car to their team's colours and enter it into the championship. So it's great to see a few teams putting in the effort here, and I'd love to see a few more of you if you're watching back this broadcast. Get your artist and your creative hats on and get a livery submitted, and we'd love to see a bit of variety in the field as we see a car peeling off into the pit lane. Not sure who that was, but a big spin out of the last turn. Not sure what happened there, Jesse.
I think that was the 917 of Black. I'm pretty sure that. I don't know if they had help trying to get in the pit lane. That is often an issue here. It's always been like that. Cars trying to come into the pit lane and maybe slowing up, of course, because of where the pit line is. And unfortunately, there's nowhere for some of the other traffic to go. No warning that you're about to peel off. I don't know if that was it, or maybe they just put too much wheel in it and gassed it up and it went around. But certainly Black made contact with the inside wall. Jordan Daly trying to go to P2 here and has done it. Made the pass on Dom Healy. The number one car, Phillips, has driven away from this group. Dom Healy back to P3, but the Just Gamers 197 up to P2.
Yeah, I was going to say Dom Healy has done exactly what the probably Wild Things Racing team want him to do. Held up Daly a little bit, allowed Phillips to kind of stretch the legs on the blue and pink traditionally coloured Wild Things Racing team, and I don't think Healy's done with this yet. Around the outside, he looks into the Melbourne hairpin. Daly comes off the inside nicely, wondering if Haley could get a run out of the hairpin much better, but he didn't. Schaefer in the back with a big armful of opposite lock, sliding the Maserati through the exit of the hairpin, and the snake is forming, Jesse. We see it a lot in the one make. Two guys start battling, and then before you know it, you've got a train of 3, 4, 5 cars behind you.
Yeah, that happened last week at Silverstone as well because of the relative high speeds. If you get stuck side by side coming through Maggots and Beckett's potentially as well, you would end up in a longer train because your mile per hour, your kilometers per hour at the end of the straight are significantly slower. The GT4 car, after all, keep in mind, keeping the RPMs, keeping the kilometers an hour up, all that stuff, way more important in a GT4 than a GT3 car after all. And you're going to see that here today, though it is a tighter racetrack. Dom Healy has given Jordan Daly everything that they can possibly handle, and I agree with you, partner. This is all because he's trying to help. Dom Healy is trying to help his teammate Phillips get further away.
Yeah, absolutely so. And Phillips now 4.5 seconds to the good. So certainly just driving away in the Maserati, whatever he's got unlocked in the setup or whatever tweak he's found or driving style this car enjoys. He has certainly hit the nail on the head with the pace at the moment. Looking great. Wondering if he can kind of keep this up though for the full hour. Of course, just over 52 minutes to go. We've only been racing for 8 minutes, but it feels like absolutely forever. And just want to touch on Martin Lawrence. We spoke about him, a little touch there from Klaus Nyring, and Dominicus allows Lawrence to kind of nearly have a sniff on the inside of the number 6 coming out of the hairpin. But a message from Martin Lawrence in the Maserati chat on the server. Forgot he was racing today, Jesse. He completely misjudged the timing.
He forgot he was racing.
He forgot he was racing, his exact words.
Yeah, Martin Lawrence, for what it's worth, is Klaus Nearing trying to make a move here, make a position up on Schaefer. Won't do it here through Redgate that time, but as close as ever. I don't think we'll see anything down through this section. This is pretty much, in my opinion, single file. But going back to Martin Lawrence for a second, that doesn't surprise me. That man was racing Friday. He was racing 6 hours on Saturday, or probably more at a race Sunday, I'm pretty sure. And you do racing every day of the week. Sometimes you start to lose track a little bit. But, hey, didn't forget fully in the race here today. Speaking of...
Certainly in the race, I was going to say, with minimum practice, trying a move there on Dominicus, the number 6, around the outside at the top of the hill into McLean's. A very tricky corner to navigate, even when you're not side by side. You know, it's so easy to miss the apex or run yourself wide, and two drivers there going side by side, giving them utmost respect to each other. So great to see. Not sure come the end of the race whether the drivers will be as respectful, but early on in the stages so far, it's been a relatively clean, touch wood, race, and the stewards are probably loving life right now. There's not too many incidents.
Yeah, it's been a really good start to the race, incredibly clean, a lot cleaner than round number 1. I wonder if maybe they got it out of their system 1 week ago, or maybe just the track not allowing it. What we're not having a shortage of, though, is good racing between all of the competitors. We've been inside the top 10 for the majority of this race, but that doesn't mean there's not good racing back here. Chris Carr for the Blacksmith Racing Maserati team making a move happen here on Tim Ireland. Ireland just got a bad launch into and out of the chicane, and that allowed Chris Carr to make the pass for 22nd place.
Yeah, even worse run through the Melbourne hairpin. Tim Ireland there losing bucket loads of time in the Maseratis. We now come back to the front with Dominicus in the number 6. Martin Lawrence just lost a little bit of ground that last lap on the back of him. Wasn't so glued as he once was, and Dominicus is kind of the car in the sandwich, essentially. He's got Klaus Nyring and Martin Schaefer ahead, so if those guys start battling, Nyring there looking for a sniff onto the inside of McLean's, nothing to be had. But if these guys start battling, that's going to back Dominicus up, and then Dominicus is going to be backed up into Lawrence, and then that's one thing you don't want to be having is Martin Lawrence firing up the inside of you when you're trying to avoid the car ahead of you at the same time. It's a very tricky scenario to be in, and riding on board here with Martin Lawrence. Got a great view of the train ahead as it snakes through. You've got Jordan Daly just ahead with Dom Healy still glued to his back bumper. Cars single file over the curbs. It's weird to see so many cars go through a chicane as Dominicus now looks to the inside of Nyring, not nearly alongside enough, and this allows Lawrence to close right up on the brakes and almost had to back out of his regular turning point because Dominicus was on the inside, shortening up the corner for him as they now run down towards the last corner. Lucas Lichton with a move on Les Stevenson. So Lichton making moves at the moment, Jesse. Maybe just didn't get the car switched on enough in qualifying, but he's certainly cycling up the order as he gives Les Stevenson way too much room in the last turn. Les Stevenson, big drift there, very well held, and Lucas Lichton around the outside into P12. He can now set his sights on the back of Matthew Kingston Lee.
We talked about Lichton and their qualifying prowess. Well, sometimes the track doesn't favor you. Sometimes the setup doesn't favor you. That doesn't mean you can't have a good race. Lichton showing you exactly that. And, oh, it's a big slide. It's a huge slide from Martin Lawrence, and that's going to close them right back up after doing all that work to get by Dominicus. It might be immediately forfeited here. Luckily, the track flatters him, and it's a left-hand uphill turn, and he might just about save this as Dominicus goes up the inside, a little wiggle of the tail, but Martin Lawrence for Connection Lost Racing has just about saved himself with the biggest slide I've seen today.
Absolutely fabulous driving from the Connection Lost Racing car, the 171. Of course, Martin Lawrence now finds himself up into P6, and just look at the gap that Nyring now has behind. Nyring can really set his sights on the back of Schaefer's highlighter kind of coloured car, the number 13. They say unlucky for some, and Nyring does just that now towards the inside into the Melbourne hairpin. Massive gap left there. You can almost fit a Martin Lawrence in the middle, and a big drift from Martin Schaefer coming out of the hairpin in the number 13. But Klaus Nyring, I think, has just about done enough to hold on. But now look, these guys have started battling. Look who's been brought back into the picture. It's Martin Lawrence, and with him he still brings Dominicus in the number 6.
One thing I will say about Martin Lawrence, a big slide like that would absolutely stifle my confidence in the race car, I would say. but not him. He gets back up on the wheel, realizes, okay, that was a little too much through there. I won't do that next time, but I'm going to get back up on the wheel, and that's exactly what he's done. That whole group there of cars from 4th all the way back to 7th place, all fighting over those positions right now. Any sort of issue there could be mega. By the way, the fight for P2 has never gone away. Jordan Daly planted a move on Dom Healy to get P2 away. Dom Healy has not gone anywhere. He's still there about 5-6 laps later.
Yeah, Dom Healy absolutely glued to the back of Jordan Daly's just gamer car, still on the 197 and the 40, and all the meanwhile his teammate Harry Phillips just driving away up the road now in the number 26, just over 7 seconds to the good. And all Dom Healy's really got to do is just make him a problem for Jordan Daly. So Daly ends up kind of driving in his mirrors more than out of the windscreen, and he just can't find enough pace to catch the back of the number 26 ahead of him, and this just kind of leaves Phillips essentially to run away with it at the front. And all they've really got to do again is not get caught up with each other, because of course Klaus Neiring is just behind him, 3 seconds to the good. So if they have a big mistake between them, of course that could bring Neiring, who brings Schaefer, Lawrence and Dominicus into the fight with them as well. As we see Lucas Lichton again, Jesse, make up another position in the race on Matthew Kingston Lee. Next on his radar, Ryan Ware in the 616.
Martin Schaefer now has been able to get by Dominicus. Dominicus now looking for a way to come back through, but Martin able to hold it off. It's the Martin and Martin show in 5th and 6th place, and they could very well take it to each other. I was just thinking about something, John. I don't think in the history of RCI in a pro field we've ever had the same team in a championship finish 1-2 in the points. I don't think that's ever happened in the 3-4 years of RCI's history. I don't think it has. Could it potentially happen here today? And the reason could it potentially happen in this championship? And the reason I bring that up is Dom Healy racing smart, not pressuring Daly. Well, he is pressuring Daly, but not trying any ill-advised moves to get by P2. He's got to realize Jordan Daly's not a threat to him in this championship. He's not a threat to Wild Things right now, is he at all? So, yeah. 3rd place, not the end of the world. Of course, a lot of racing left to go in the race, though I will say something has happened to the 3rd place car. They're 3.8 seconds behind Jordan Daly now.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Healy's just got to kind of keep within earshot of Daly, but he has made a mistake somewhere along the line. And of course, Klaus Neiring now right up onto the back of him. So Healy thinking he had a fairly easy drive. Of course, like you say, P3 is, you know, nothing to shake your head at. And a good haul of points there for the championship effort for Dom Healy alongside his teammate. But yeah, Klaus Neiring now a real threat. And of course, with him brings Martin Lawrence, and Schaefer just behind him as well, as we see an RPMS car coming out the pit lane just ahead. Could traffic be the kind of shoehorn here for Neiring to get through side by side down the Craner curves? They go. Dom Healy goes through. Klaus Neiring goes around the outside in the Craner curves, and that is something I do not want to do myself, especially in a car as sketchy as the Maserati. Martin Lawrence manages to get through into the old hairpin, and this now gives him a little bit of breathing space, because Schaefer got a little bit delayed with Dominicus, and now Dominicus is right on the back of Schaefer, and this fight is about to get it on as well.
I want to give credit to the RPMS car that came out of the pit lane like that. Obviously, cold tires, it doesn't do you any good, and you've got lead lap cars, your blue flagged, of course, on top of that, but just excellent driving, being bared down upon by the top 5 in the race, and wasn't over eager to get out of the way, but did exactly what you need to do whenever you're a lap down in that case, regardless of what your strategy is. Be predictable. So very well done. Made that as easy as pie. Kevin Boss, by the way, from the Wheelie Slow Racing team, trying to take the lead away from the number 11 to take the lead again 2 weeks in a row. We talked about it. Won his first race at Silverstone here. First race win ever at RCI. Thought he might have a shot to win it here today, John. Certainly looking like he's going to, right on the back bumper of the leader.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely in good contention here. Kevin Boss just behind Dan Van Zoofen in the number 11 E-Sky WP Racing Team liveried car. Of course, the only livery to kind of feature in the game for the Maserati. Of course, only one madman choosing this in the real life season that the ACC was replicated upon. But Battle of the Netherlands at the front here, of course, Van Zoofen and Kevin Boss both from the same country, and it's going to be who can get the heads up, and both drivers exercising all of the track limits here in turn one as they come down the crane of curves towards the old hairpin. Kevin Boss certainly looking very fast indeed in the wake of Van Zoofen's Maserati, but it's going to be who can keep this clean and who can make the pass safely, because of course we've got the live stewards in the box, and Kevin Boss to the outside of McLean's now, turn 7 up the hill. Fantastic scenes from the helicam here, and nearly around the outside McLean's he goes, but they're still side by side now as they head to turn 8 of Coppice, going the long way around. Kevin Boss on the right hand side of your screen, Van Zoofen on the inside, a little bit of a touch. Both drivers go to right and left side. Boss hinders himself slightly into Starkey Straight, but Van Zoofen just about holds on, I think, for another lap.
Oh, but here he is. He's looking down to the inside, and he's not given any quarter. He does back out at the last possible second, and they end up still 1 and 2 in the configuration they started the lap in. But that was some extra spicy racing. Now looking down to the inside of the hairpin, Kevin Boss looking to make the move. It's a wide angle from Dan Van Zoofen, who will come up the inside, but unfortunately for Goddards, that will be the outside. If he can outbrake Kevin Boss, he might still have a shot to out-drag him down the pit straight and into Redgate. He's going to try an over-under move again. I'm afraid he's too far back. A little bit of wheel spin from Kevin Boss, but there's a new leader in the AM class.
Yeah, Kevin Boss to the front of the AM class, and we said, you know, this typical last week he took his first maiden victory and we didn't even cast it, so hoping for a second one on the trot this week for Kevin Boss.
I told him he would just have to do it again. I didn't think he took me serious, though.
Just have to push the accelerator that little bit harder than Van Zoofen now to drive away, and of course he's got a little bit of traffic ahead of him in the form of the RPMS car once again, but we saw very heads-up driving last time. The blue flag was waved when the leaders came through, so you know, it should be the same pattern here when the AM leaders come through. And of course, just on the back of them, creeping into shot, we saw him kind of mess up the S's, but it's Smith in the 25. He could be a real kind of, you know, shoe in this battle as well, horning himself in to the middle of them and disrupt the battle of the Dutchies.
Well, I will say the battle of the Dutch drivers up at the front of the field, won currently by Boss, and now quite interesting about that battle. Boss becomes a Van Zoofen fan because he needs Van Zoofen to hold up Smith, because Smith seems to be coming with a lot of speed as well. Speaking of, Dominica still trying to figure out a way by Schaefer. Martin Lawrence has disappeared up the road a little bit. In fact, has joined an additional train. Klaus Neering and Dom Healy, all those cars, third through fifth place, I should say, all fighting for a final podium spot. These cars not too far out of touch. In fact, you can see that group I'm talking about just in front, but still very close quarters, very tight racing. This race has been extra spicy.
Yeah, extra spicy indeed, and we're only 22 minutes in, Jesse, as Klaus Neering now finds himself wide but keeps the foot in it. Lawrence goes round the outside at the top of the hill into McLean's, and just about has that move signed, sealed and delivered. And Lawrence can now fix his back on the battle with Dom Healy just ahead of him, the bright yellow car with a possible potential Code Brown moment any moment in the next 38 minutes. I wouldn't like to be Dom Healy in this race, because that's going to be playing in the back of his mind, especially with a name as Martin Lawrence. We know him from, of course, Connection Lost Racing, very early days of RCI. The team sprung up and it's still around to this current day, entering in a plethora of events here that we host. And of course, if you are curious to anything we host, or you do want to get involved in what you see on the screens, of course, all you do need is a copy of ACC and some relevant DLC. And if you are looking to get into ACC, now is going to be the time, because a big update is coming on Wednesday. 1.9 drops, brings with it a new circuit, 3 new cars, a plethora of suspension, electronics, dampers and tyre changes. So it's really going to be a good time to get into the game. And I'm sure I saw it the other week on sale on Steam. Not sure if it is still available at a cut price, but of course, do go and check it out if you do want to get involved. You can, of course, head on over to the website that we host, racerci.com, where you can have a full calendar breakdown of everything we host, catch the signups when they go live, and of course, be sure to drop into our Discord for even more notifications about what is going on here with us at RCI.
I just want to give a shout out to Christian Stricker, our broadcaster, Stewie, unable to be with us for a second week here. And Christian Stricker with us today. He was the one flying the drone camera and bringing you all of the shots from the action here as well. Most notably, Stricker's known for his work on the Thursday Champ. He's not broadcast a race in months. I don't even know how long it's been. It's been a long time. Jumps back in the booth, very short notice, just got set up last night, and it's like he's never missed a beat. And on top of that, getting treated to an excellent show here today. Certainly we all are. Ted Edwards in chat says, screw good racing or great racing. It's amazing racing, it is, but that's tight stuff right there coming through the S's.
Yeah, Martin Schaefer with a big mistake through the S's, and you just saw the ground Dominicus managed to take away from him. But Schaefer still with a run around the outside into the Melbourne hairpin, going to try the old up and under, drifting the car out to the exit curb, as we've seen so much with him. I'm wondering who he's going to be taking a fresh set of Pirellis when he comes down the lane. A couple of pit stops already on the board. Of course, we have Matthias Thornberg, Nico Kumpu, Richard Phillips, Christopher Black, Cormac Quinn, Daniel Martinez, Tom Shipstead and Martin Foster, all to take a trip down the lane. Rough pit in to pit out is about 32 seconds for the fastest drivers, so you can of course add a little bit of time on for the guys that are taking tyres. Possibly Tom Shipstead on a fresh set of tyres with a 1:01, Martin Foster with a 1:03, and everybody else in the high 30s. So it's safe to say a lot of drivers running without the tyre change, and it's a little bit of a risky move, on not taking tyres, Jesse. If you end up pitting early, you have a massive lockup into one of the corners, or you're just constantly sliding the car about and wearing down the tyres, as Dominicus there pitching the car in quite hard to McLean's with looked like a near snag of the rear brake there. But it's a bit of a risky strat pitting early in a race where tyre wear is so different to what most drivers are used to.
Yeah, I think the only reason you would come in very early is that if you were clear of whomever you were battling with, or if you had a problem, or if you were mired so far back in traffic that it was advantageous to come in. I think most everybody else will stay out as long as possible, but I will say, just as I've said that, Kevin Voss has brought the wheelie slow car down to the pit lane. A huge slide here as these two continue to go at it. Schaefer will try and keep up with Dominicus in front of them, as the tires do not appreciate being slid around as much as some of these cars are. But I would not change tires here today. I just don't think you can, in these cars around this circuit, I don't think you can change tires and make up all of that time that you lost. It's not a circuit that you would usually do that at regardless, because of the size. And even here today with the slower speeds, though it may give you better grip, I just don't think it's worth it to risk it. Something else we haven't talked about at all, track limits that could come into play. I've seen a couple of cars in the S's that I suspect have gotten track limit warnings. Remember, you get 3 of those, and on the 4th time of asking, you get the dreaded drive-through penalty. The silver lining to that is the pit lane here quite small, but still it will damage your final position of the day. So hopefully we don't see any of that, but I suspect we will before the day's over.
Yeah, of course, track limits is always one of those things that rears its head kind of time and time again. And of course, with a car as loose as the Maserati, it's maybe all too easy to pick them up, especially the S's. It seems very unforgiving sometimes on whether it's a penalty or not. And just want to, speaking of penalties, a few reports have come in down into the steward's box, although most of them appear to be kind of minor contacts, racing incidents, no further actions, another racing incident, a couple of warnings all being given out, but no one, crucially, with a time penalty. So, it still keeps the racing very much alive. Stewards maybe being a little bit more forgiving with the Maserati being a much trickier car to drive. Of course, some drivers never setting foot inside this car before the championship even reared its head. Other drivers absolutely loving this car and maybe having a little bit of fun in it on the off season, especially with how loose the car gets and how dynamic it is to drive. And of course, with the 1.9 update changing tires and suspension, I'm wondering if the GT4 cars are going to be privy to any of those changes as well.
That's a very good point, John. We hadn't seen anything to support or deny that, but I wonder as well, because an update to the GT4s, that could make that incredibly spicy going forward. You're reading penalty reports. I just realized something as well on the vein of giving shout out to Jake Boswell, who's back this week, was under the weather a week or so ago, and hope he's feeling better. Back into the steward's box today. Race control, I do believe, handing out the penalty reports again. A little bit of an RCI reunion today.
Yeah, we seem to have a few names, cropping up from many different areas of RCI. We even had Ted Edwards yesterday in the booth for an hour on the 6-hour broadcast. So it's great to see everybody coming out of their like winter hibernations, should we say? Of course, back into the racing season. Christian Stricker, of course, Jake Boswell. When Stewie comes back next week, that'll be a bit of a reunion again for me and Stewie. Yeah, it's all very good to see at RCI. And of course, if you guys at home are wondering, can I help with RCI? Of course you can. Drop it into our Discord. I believe we do have a vacancies channel where you can, of course, try your hand at anything. And I think I speak for kind of everyone here. We can never have enough stewards, Jesse Lee.
Oh, without a doubt. Stewarding always super important. It's the only thing that keeps the race fair and concise. And if you have an interest in becoming a steward, I'm sure they would like the help. For more information on how to do that exactly, just join the Discord and look at the staff vacancies like John Dalton said. Very spicy racing going on here. Chris Carr and I believe that's Tornberg, in fact, going at it over 18th place. They've spent the better part of the second half of this lap side by side. Will Matthias Tornberg get the run into Redgate? No, sweeping around the outside. Nico Kumpu, in fact, getting involved here as well, going up the inside as close as you like down the inside. There's contact. No car leaves the racetrack as they go down into the old hairpin. Contact maybe, but no additional drama there as a 2-car fight turned into a 3-car fight that released Tornberg out in front a little bit.
Yeah, no idea how that didn't end up, both drivers exited to stage left down the Craner curves and ended up in the wall at the old hairpin, but very well held from Kumpu and Carr. And of course, we said it earlier on, seeing the red name board next to your opponent thinking, oh, this guy's an am. I'm not liking this. You get a bit elbows out and, some egos might get dented along the way and, you don't necessarily mean to be overly aggressive. The AM drivers fighting for a very different championship in a very different way. We saw, of course, earlier on Dan Van Zoofen and Kevin Boss going at each other for the AM lead, and the respect they gave each other. They almost gave too much space at any given time. And flicking forward to the front here, Dom Healy is past Jordan Daly, the number 197 car in the blue and highlighted yellow behind, and the fluorescent yellow car just ahead. There's Christian Stricker's pushing all sorts of buttons, wondering what's going on here with track maps and overlays, but he's just about got it. He's a little bit rusty. Bear with him while he gets back into the flow of things. But
what do you mean? He was just showing you where they are on the racetrack. That's a normal thing.
He was just showing an exploded large view of Donington GP. But Dom Healy now ahead of Jordan Daly. And I think we've got a replay here. Looks like Daly very slow out of turn one, Jesse, down the Craner curves. Dom Healy makes very light work of him, and he's far ahead before they even get to a braking zone.
Yeah, something would have certainly happened to Jordan Daly, I suspect, because the car wasn't backwards in the amount of time lost. I'm assuming Jordan Daly ran off the racetrack quite wide. Could have been a red gate, could have been a 2 into turn 2 as well. Don't know, but part of meandering back to the racetrack would have certainly lost that time. The other option, I suppose, is Dom Healy. I combined Dom Healy and Jordan Daly. They are Dealey.
Name a more iconic duo.
I know, right? Dom Healy, though, also, we didn't catch this because we were watching action further back, could have potentially ran him back down, but I suspect the more likely option is maybe a little bit of a mistake. You saw another car do what I suspect Jordan Daly did a lap ago.
Yeah, absolutely so. And car off there to drivers left, staying way out of the way as P2 and P3 came through. And I believe they've got a little bit more traffic ahead now. I think I just saw the headlights flashing from Dom Healy wanting to get a move on to say, you know, I'm fighting for a position. Please do not hold me up
Wait,
here.
Does
and
it flash the brake lights too? Or was that him on the brakes?
It doesn't. It was Healy on the brakes. Saw the reflection from the back of Dan Van Zuten's car. There's no kind of wacky Italian electronics at hand here, Jesse Lee. It's just so be it a coincidence. But yeah, it would be very funny knowing Alfa Romeo's history with electronics, I hear, isn't too great.
Wow, moving swiftly on from that before he angers somebody. Jordan Daly still in the mix, trying to get that back. Dom Healy has the position, and we know just how important having position over somebody can be. Oh, look at Daly going down to the inside. Was it a little bit wide from Dom Healy, as Jordan Daly might have caught him napping just a little bit, a little slide. Might that be the reprieve from Healy? No, it isn't. Sliding over into the defensive line as they enter Goddard's. It's a late braking maneuver from Healy around the outside. They're side by side and as close as you like. Off of the final turn, he's going to shade him to the side. No, he gives him room, but that's job done. Caught him napping perhaps down to the hairpin. Jordan Daly gets the spot back all of a sudden.
Yeah, Daly back to P2 before the first corner. Excellent move there around the outside, kind of into Goddard's. They tried another attack on Dom Healy, and Tom Shipston getting all out of shape behind. And Dom Healy really not giving this one up. I think he's going to be chomping at the bit now behind Daly, of course. His teammate Phillips up the road now, 14 seconds to the good. I think Daly's just got to firmly fix his eyes on that yellow Maserati behind and make sure he doesn't get passed again by him.
John, in your opinion, was that lap traffic base that held Dom up and gave Jordan Daly the opportunity, or is that just the pace out of the 197 as Healy dips a tire off of the racetrack? You got to be aware of that, especially later into the race. That's going to become more of a problem. Certain avenues that you could go and start to gas up the car on the felt, the AstroTurf over the curbs. It's going to become more and more precarious. But question stands, John, was that Healy being held up by traffic the thing that he was obviously fearful of in the first place, or was that the power of the 197?
It could have been both, to be fair, Jesse. The traffic obviously playing a hand in Healy's run up the hill through McLean's into turn 8, of course, allowed Jordan Daly to come kind of back at him ever so slightly. And I think the traffic was just kind of what Daly needed to gain that ground again after the mistake he made in turn 1, which allowed Healy back through again. But Martin Lawrence, all the meanwhile, Jesse, has been kind of looking from afar on this one and kind of witnessing what's going on as Healy pulls off into the pit lane. Keep an eye on his pit stop timer to see if he takes tires or not.
First of the top 5 to come into the pit lane, Dom Healy. Everybody else will be thinking about doing it themselves. Dominicus in the lane as well, also out of the top 10. The only 2 from the lead squad to come in. Phillips has a commanding 14.5 to 15 second lead. Martin Lawrence matriculates to P3 for the time being. They'll be looking to make some lap time in the CLR Maserati and pull further away from Klaus Nearing and Schaefer behind. The lead car of the ones that have pitted should be Dom on the way out. Prior to that, it was Badowski in the 45. Several of the AM cars, the majority of the AM field, have come in and pitted, including Kevin Boss, who was one of the very first in the race to come into the pit lane. They are the leader of the AM class that have done so, 2.5 clear of Smith. And we'll see what the leaders in the AM class do. Car, of course, does have a 5-second penalty. John, do you have more on that?
I do indeed. I was scrabbling around just as I saw that pop up on the left-hand side of your screen. Of course, the number 184 currently in P17 with +5 next to it. Of course, if you're new to watching ACC and you're wondering what the +5 is, it is, of course, a penalty given out by our live stewards. And when they do give a penalty, we do get a full explanation in a little side channel in our Discord. So this comes down to the incident we witnessed between Carr and Nico Kumpu. So lap 19, turn 2, involving the 104 and the 256. We have a warning for the 104 for contact It's a second warning for the 104 for this manner, and thus he has picked up the 5 seconds. So your next question is going to be, how does he serve the 5 seconds? And well, if he's still got a pit stop remaining, which he has, which is indicated by the little orange number 1 next to their name, he'll serve an additional 5 seconds stationary in the pit box. If you have a green little box next to your name, which of course means you've achieved your pit stop requirement for the series, the 5 seconds in this case, if it was, would be tacked on to the end of your race time. So if you think you've won a fight and you've got a 5-second penalty late on in the race, unfortunately you might not have won that fight, and back down you go. But Chris Carr now on to the back of Fukushio in the number 28 car, goes to the outside into turn 1. Very slow. Maserati on the outside nearly caught out Chris Carr there. He had to kind of shallow up the run. I think he was going to try the old switcheroo and try and get a run down the crane of curves into the old hairpin, but the green car being the spanner in the works here.
Yeah, I suspect that car was coming out of pit lane. It's not a very advantageous pit in or pit out here at Donington, if we're completely fair with ourselves. And you have to be aware of that. It often results in 3 wides into red gate. That was no exception to the rule. I think Chris Carr did exactly what any smart driver would do. This is a big pass, though, if they can get by the leader in the class, because they can start chipping away at that 5 seconds. It's not an automatic nail in the coffin having a 5-second penalty, by the way. You can overcome that, and if there's ever a day where that was going to be possible, it's going to be in a Maserati around here, because of how, I wouldn't say inherently unstable, but it's very fluid, the situation in these cars, as you saw with Jordan Daly earlier, potentially going off into the dirt, losing second place. If it can happen to one of the best drivers in the race, it can happen to literally anyone.
Yeah, it's certainly a very kind of mistake-prone car, should we say. It's, a lot more unforgiving for those of you new to ACC. Of course, the Maserati being the only car, I think, in the game from memory that doesn't have any electronic aids, whether it be TC or ABS. So you've got to be super careful on your kind of throttle and steering inputs at the same time as being very careful on the brakes. Otherwise, it's super easy to overdrive the car. And now, speaking of car, and Chris Carr here in the 104 is now past Fukushio in the 28. Fukushio tries to make a late dive on the brakes, coming back. Slows himself up on corner exit, and Carr with a much cleaner run through the corner is going to start pulling out lengths now as Dominicus fights his way back from the pit stop. He served the number 6 coming through the top of McLean's turn 7. He's got his eyes firmly fixated on Healy, who is up the road now, who is essentially the lead car, should we say, who has taken a pit stop. And now Martin Lawrence and Jordan Daly are now about to begin a fight, and it looks like Daly almost gifted him the position.
So, had something else happened to Jordan Daly, or is that just the overall pace of Martin Lawrence's CLR Maserati? I don't know, but there was a significant gap. It was over a second, and within 2 laps, it was all but gone. Martin Lawrence given the position, in my opinion. Daly, of course, not going to really contest a fight like that if he doesn't have to. And of course, these two know each other. It's another slide from Martin Lawrence, though this one's slightly less dramatic, but that will draw Jordan Daly back up into this fight. And will he take a look down the inside? Not quite enough overlap to have that happen, but for the second time in this race, Martin Lawrence going sideways through old hairpin.
Yeah, I wonder if Jordan Daly, we spoke about it yesterday, Jesse, on the 6-hour broadcast, whether Daly's just kind of choosing his fights wisely. We see it a lot in the endurance series where, one car will clearly give up the place for the next car just to stop hampering each other in fighting. Of course, if you're taking lumps out of each other every corner, you're going to bring your rivals back into the mix. And Daly maybe very smart driving there. Of course, Nyring just behind, nearly 5 seconds to the good, but he does have a charging Dom Healy in the number 40, currently down in P9. Of course, they were locked together when Healy pulled into the pits. Healy, if you're wondering, at 35 seconds from pit in to pit out. So, of course, not taking tyres there. So Daly's going to have an immediate reaction and do the same strategy if he wants to stay within earshot. And Matthew Kingston-Lee and Lucas Lichton now back together. We saw Lichton making moves up through the field earlier on, and Lichton now finds himself under pressure from what could be the greatest name in sim racing.
Well, he is the best. He's got the best name in sim racing, and I'm not biased at all. But Matthew Kingston-Lee, trying to do their very level best here today. They're inside the top 10 right now by virtue of not doing their pit stop, but they have their own battles. Well, I tell you what, I just saw there. I saw Lichton do that and then immediately said, well, that looked like fun. I want to do that as well.
Yeah, absolutely so, and absolutely accelerating away from the final corner. And Jordan Daly now out of the pit lane. The number 197 has just about done enough on the lane to beat the Wild Things Racing Team car out. They came in locked together, and now you see Healy just behind there. We're going to have to wait for the timings to update as they cross through Sector 1. Just 1 second separates these guys, and still just under 20 minutes of racing to go. A little bit of traffic ahead of Daly. Could come into this. Could Healy do the same as what Daly did to him, where he got backed up in traffic and just found his way past, and a big slide from Daly there up through McLean's.
Well, now the question certainly shifts. We know what happened between Daly and Healy. Well, now the question is, what will happen with Martin Lawrence when they pit? Remember, Lawrence just went up and passed Jordan Daly. So Lawrence, when they decide to pit, where will they come out? You would generally suspect they'd come out in front, but who knows? Based on the pit stop, we will have to see, because this is a three-way fight for what should be P2 now.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at the board on the left, you know, drivers still separated by big gaps, but you've got to remember that anybody with a green marker next to their name has, of course, served the mandatory pit stop, and anybody with a 1 still is yet to serve theirs. So, you know, we've got a lot of time yet to go. Still just under 15 minutes on the pit window. Tim Ireland getting way out of the way of this fight, saying, I want nothing to do with Daly and Healy taking lumps out of each other, and Tim yielding so much there. It's crazy. I've never seen a man dive off a circuit so much in all my life. So great respect to Tim Ireland there. But just want to pick it up from P11, Dominicus with a drive-through and a big wiggle from Healy. I'm going to see what Dominicus' drive-throughs for, see if the stewards have reported anything. But I suspect, Jesse, we said it at the start of the broadcast, it's track limits.
Yep. Yeah, the stewards looking at us, shaking their heads, which means it's not coming from them. Dominicus, the first to run afoul of the ACC assigned track limits. That's not a steward's penalty. That is automatically assigned by the sim, and the first, and I hope the only, but somehow I highly doubt it. Dom Healy is driving the wheels off that Wild Things Racing Maserati, trying to keep pace.
Yeah, Team WTR probably on the radio now, telling him to push as much as he can. See if he can maybe even force Daly in to take in too much curb through a chicane, too much exit curb out of a corner, and maybe force him in to a penalty just by overdriving the Just Gamers number 197. And Badowski, I don't know if anybody's been paying attention to the broadcast. We've got a few meme team names, should we say, in the series. And Marco Badowski...
What do you need?
Racing under the Why Am I Doing This team name. And if you've seen Matthias Thornberg, I believe his team name's like Square Tires Racing or something, some homage to lack of ABS and flat spots. We had Callum Kerrigan last week show us the flat spots on his Maserati, and we coined a phrase of the Kerrigan Shuffle, but unfortunately Callum's signing out from the series, so maybe saving his wrists for the long run.
I don't know what you're talking about. I think all of these team names are legitimate, and there's certainly one acronym in this series that I won't draw any more attention to, but when you see it, you see it, and when you know, it's completely fine. Yeah, the Square Tire Racing of Tornberg in the 54 has found themselves a little bit of space for the time being. Nico Kumpu, Ware, and Badowski in front of them. They get racing. Tornberg will be right back in the mix. And is that Lichton right behind him? Yes, it is. And that forms this group on the racetrack here. All of these cars, of course, have completed their stops. These are for position.
Yeah, absolutely so. And Nico Kumpu on the back of Ryan Ware, looking to try and make up a position into P11. Ryan Ware, another driver with a fantastic custom livery, a very striking colour combination there of orange and kind of aqua blue. A little wiggle through McLean's coming up to the top of turn 8 on Coppice, and a little bit unstable. Kumpu all over the curb, trying to short line the corner as much as he can. Manages to get a nose alongside, coming down into what would have been the Dunlop Bridge. We go to a helicam now. Nico Kumpu just ahead, although I'm wondering if will he stick it round the outside of Ryan Ware. He tries it, ends up with a trip to the beach through the sand trap. He's going to have to lift Jesse, or the ACC penalty system might catch him out. And here comes Tornberg as well, up the inside. He's about to do them both into the Melbourne hairpin. Jesse, still fantastic racing to go, and just under 13 minutes on the clock.
Man, I got to say, I love it when I say something and the drivers do it to prove me right. That very seldom ever happens, but that's exactly what I was talking about. That's all it takes. One turn is what that took to erase a 1 second gap, and that's kind of what you see in a race like this. The top 4 still yet to pit: Phillips, Lawrence, Naring, and Schaefer. The 2 cars behind them, Daly and Healy, have pitted, and Matthew Kingston Lee, who is up there in the mix as well. That's the yellow car in the shot, the second yellow car, I should say, in the shot there. Kingston Lee, of course, still has a pit stop left to give. Those are your top runners as the leader of the race is in.
Yeah, leader of the race in. Harry Phillips, Wild Things Team Racing, trundles below our feet into his box to serve the mandatory stop. And Matthias Thornberg for Square Tire Racing, looking to the inside still of Ryan Ware at the top of the hill of McLean's turn 7, running now to Coppice of turn 8. Got to be careful. Nico Kumpu doesn't try the same maneuver again. And with him, of course, he is going to bring Lichton as well. I was about to say, Flat Out Racing by Team Iris on the number 140. He's just kind of sat back with a prime view at the moment, Jesse. If anything happens between these 3 cars ahead, he's going to be the man to capitalize.
Can I just say, I just want to give a big credit, and I'm probably doing this 11 and a half minutes too early, but I'm going to say it anyway. Big kudos to all the drivers and teams. There's not been one real major incident today. There's been a lot of opportunity for that. There's just been a heck of a lot of good racing. This included Tornberg able to complete that pass that he tried 1 lap ago. He's +2 in the last couple of laps. The Square Tire Racing car feeling good, looking good, up in another position. Well done. The train, though, still there, and those laps brought Kumpu in there, and then the second lap brought Lichton back in, as they're all fighting over what could eventually, and what will almost certainly be, a top 10 spot. The question is, how far up the grid could they potentially go? Oh no! And I have said it too early. I said it 15 seconds early, to be exact. Contact there, Nico Kumpu, and was that Ware that he had contact with?
Yeah, Ryan Ware involved there. Kumpu sliding through turn 1. Ware slid out a little bit wide. Kumpu thought he saw a gap, gassed it maybe a little bit too early, and just caught the rear quarter of Ryan Ware's car. Lichton goes through, and Thornberg drives off as well into the distance. I think he's waiting for Ryan Ware. He is indeed, so kudos to Nico Kumpu. But this, of course, brings Les Stevenson into the mix, and he says, thank you very much. I will have a position briefly before we get to McLean's at the top of the hill, and a big wiggle on the outside from Les Stevenson. Nico Kumpu back to the inside for Coppice. He's probably going to have this move. Signstill delivered a little bit of a bonk, forces Les Stevenson wide, but unfortunately for Les, keeps it on the black stuff between the white lines. But Kumpu back through into P14. Ryan Ware just ahead now in P13, and Stewart's probably going to be having a look at that one, Jesse, but probably thinking that, you know, he gave the position back, so if there is a penalty to be had, it's probably going to be a much less severe one than what would have been.
Yeah, certainly will do. And next time I'll just shut my mouth and not mention anything about the good, clean racing we've experienced all day. A couple of other top cars in. Klaus Nearing into the pit lane, surrendering P3 for the time being. We told you right before that kicked off, the leader Phillips in the pit lane. No dramas there that we are aware of. Mathis there in the middle of the pack racing. There's racing everywhere. Nearly sliding it out is Dom Heatley, the Wild Things racing car that drove so well at Silverstone up through the top 5 and ended up in P2. It was a brilliant job, has had their work cut out for them today. They were virtually unchallenged a week ago. They've been anything but today, challenged by all sorts and all comers, but they have stood the test of time thus far, and still, as if chained to the hip, Jordan Bailey and Dom Heatley continuing their fight from the green flag onward.
Yeah, absolutely. So fight still very much alive as we ride on board now with Dom Healy. Just look how close he is to the back of Jordan Daly. Within half a second now of the Just Gamers driver ahead, the number 197, the blue and fluorescent green livery with a very bright car behind him in the form of the Wild Things racing team in kind of yellow rather than their traditional dark blue and pink color combo that we see. But looks like Daly's just much more confident on corner exit, and maybe Healy is that little bit more confident going in. So we kind of have this cat and mouse tit for tat game as we see a big drift out of turn 1 for Jordan Daly, coming down to the Craner curves now, turns 2 and 3 as they drop to the bottom of the hill, of the old hairpin. We've got a car ahead, Jesse. This could be another kind of, spanner in the works for Jordan Daly. He's going to be seeing the car getting ever closer ahead of him, and he's going to be kind of forecasting what he's going to do once he catches the back. But having known this green car and seen it earlier on in the race, I feel like they might just dive straight out of the way as they did before.
They might as well just do driving off the racetrack. That's an expensive lawnmower, Dom Healy. Though, admittedly, these Maseratis are not some of the most expensive cars that you can race in. Actually, Maseratis of the nature, not terribly expensive in compared to other GT4 cars, or at least they weren't at the time. I digress. 3 cars still yet to bid, including the now leader of the race, Martin Lawrence. I believe Matthew Kingston Lee is one of them as well, and there's a car in third place. I forget the number, but they are in third still without a pit stop. They have 5 minutes or so to get that done. I suspect they're going as long as humanly possible. Chris Carr from Blacksmith Racing trying to go around the outside, can't do it. Trying the over undercut into Redgate, can't do it. That's also covered up very well by the number 20. Kevin Boss, by the way, has filtered out into the lead of the AM class. He doesn't have too much of a lead to deal with. He's got Nico Kumpu right behind him, and less than a second and a half behind him is Smith. Speaking of Kumpu, John Dalton, we expected a penalty might be coming, and I think we've seen it.
Yeah, penalty flashed up on screen for Nico Kumpu, and it's a 15-second penalty on that one. So Stewart's looking at it as a lap 31, turn 1, involving the 256 and the 616. 15 seconds for the 256. Spins out the 616 on corner exit, although position returns. So could have been a 30. And speaking of spinning, Dom Healy there with a drift of the race up through McLean's and turn 7. Very well held there from the Wild Things racing team on that one. And yeah, absolutely great. Great piece of driving there from the number 40. And I think that's got to be up there with the best slide of the race, Jesse.
Yeah, of course, Dom, a GTR enthusiast. He's used to having the extra grip in his automobile, and certainly traction control and all sorts. Has none of that here today, making it look easy. I know Dom can drift a little bit as well, so no surprise there. Won't be doing the tires any favors, but considering he's been doing things like that all race and it's not really impeded his lap time, I think he's going to be just fine.
Yeah, absolutely so. And of course, rounding now in to the final 5 minutes. You've just got to claw on for a few more laps yet. And Kevin Boss looking from the back of his rear wing. Nico Kumpu on a charge, trying to etch out the 15 seconds that he can so he doesn't lose any more positions. Getting very close to the back of Kevin Boss. Be very careful, Nico. Stewart's already looking at you. And if you make contact with the AM leader, it's not going to go down well in their eyes either.
Be careful, Nico. Be careful, Kevin Boss. This is not a car you're racing. This does not impact your championship. You're the championship leader, Kevin Boss. That car is not a threat to you. They've got a penalty anyway. And also, Smith is bearing down your back door. So, in my opinion, it's be careful, Kevin Boss. You don't want to throw it away inside the final 5 minutes here.
Yeah, it could be detrimental, of course. Kevin Boss complaining last week that he got his maiden win with RCI, and we didn't even broadcast it, so how dare we? But here we are at round 2, so fingers crossed he can claw on for the final. Just over 4 minutes to go as Chris Carr and Fukushio still trying to take chunks out of each other, still trying to find a way past in the Blacksmith Racing Maserati number 104, but still no move to be had into the S's. Dom Healy, Jordan Daly still locked together. Schaefer ahead still yet to pit with just over 2 minutes on the clock. So he is really running out the clock along with Martin Lawrence. So in theory, once those two drivers come down the lane, Phillips should be promoted into P1, Daly P2 and Healy in P3 as a big wiggle there through the Melbourne hairpin. I think these Pirellis have had the best of it now, Jesse.
Without a doubt, I think maybe they will start to give up, and they will give up as late as possible, of course, into a race. And with all the big slides, I think they've been done absolutely no favors here today. Hopefully, though, they can continue their pursuit on, cool them down maybe a little bit, not sliding them, but yet certainly those Pirellis are past the best date here. Kumpu making a move. This is for position on the racetrack, but not in class. What that does do is release Kumpu from this field, but that brought Smith right to the back of Kevin Boss. We have a fight for the lead and the win here in the AM class. Mathis going the long way around the outside. This is again AM versus pro class. That did nothing but help Kevin Boss and frustrate Smith.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, Kevin Boss now really has to be careful of Smith just behind him, of course, in the number 25 kind of black and aqua car you see just in front here of Matthias Aquidon in the 21. And as they round into Redgate, doesn't look close enough for a move this time by, but two red numbers locked together on the board. Of course, Aquidon also has Richard Phillips bearing down on him in the 22. So ironically, the 21 and the 22 find themselves together on track in number order. So just over 2 minutes to go. Pit window 30 seconds remaining. Martin Lawrence is down the lane. See where he comes out on the timing in the number lost him. Where's he gone? The number 171. Sorry, he's still stationary on the start-finish straight. As you see the darker grey dot amongst the lighter grey cars, and out the lane he comes. And I think he's just behind on Dom Healy and Kingston Lee. Kingston Lee still yet to pit. He should come down in theory this time by as well. And Martin Schaefer in and out for his mandatory stop. So looks like everybody this time has remembered their stops, Jesse.
Yeah, Matthew Kingston Lee got into the lane with about 15, 16 seconds or so. That's absolutely knowing where your marker is going to be. And that, and a lot of times in a series like this, requires your driver to do very quick math. I can't do math with a calculator, let alone do it while driving a race car at a high level. But credit to all of the last of the late pitters, and Kingston Lee, the closest of all of them, able to get done and down. All the pit stops complete. Everybody good. Nobody in violation of the clock. And it is going to be a one-lap battle here as the leader is coming through the hairpin here, not quite Redgate. So there will be one more lap of racing for everybody, including these two.
Yeah, let's hope everybody's chucked enough fuel in for the length of the race, shall we, as well. Because we've seen a few drivers before in the past at RCI just slightly miscalculating. It looks like Dom Healy's got a very good run through the S's to the back of Jordan Daly, riding on board the splitter cam. To the outside goes the Wild Things racing car. Daly on the defensive to the inside. This will, of course, hamper his run slightly in a car sideways there. That looked like maybe Chris Carr. I'm not sure on that one in the 154. It could have been, as we see a yellow flag out as well for the 31.
Kevin Boss has crashed.
Not sure.
Kevin Boss has crashed.
What's happened to Kevin?
Absolutely no idea. Don't know if that was contact with another car that was coming out of Old Hairpin. They hadn't yet made it to the top of the hill. Something happened to the 31. I wonder if that was a self-spin. We don't have reports of any contact. So might that have been a race-ruining spin there?
I mean, the Old Hairpin exit curb is pretty lethal, Jesse. If you dip a wheel in the grass and you just about misjudge it, it can be very detrimental. But it looked like Kevin Boss was kind of around about here when he was being shown the yellow flag. So an odd place to spin, unless he just had a tank slapper coming up the hill. And of course, it just kind of outlasted itself. Another yellow flag for Dominicus in the number 6. Stopped at the last corner. Not sure why on that one either. But let's keep our eyes focused on this fight. Dom Healy glued to the back still of Jordan Daly in the 197. A little bit of traffic ahead. Hopefully this doesn't detriment him. It doesn't. Tom Shipston staying way out of the way of this fight as they now come down to the S's. He's running out of corners is Dom Healy, still chomping at the bit of the Maserati ahead of Jordan Daly. The Just Gamers 197 tries to break the toe into the Melbourne Heaven.
Super defensive.
Daly, super defensive, very early on the brakes as well, Jesse. Nearly caught Dom Healy out, forced him to take evasive action. Healy with a little bit of a slide. I don't think he's going to have just enough as we see Harry Phillips just pass us in the comms box. The number 26, of course, Wild Things Racing Team taking the top step of the podium. But this fight here was where it was at. Martin Lawrence in P2. Jordan Daly, a flash of the headlights, and Dom Healy, nothing to be had, unfortunately. P4 for Dom Healy. But what a great race, Jesse Lee. Could not wish for a better ending. That was on the edge of your seat stuff. And there's still a fight going on between Les Stevenson and Ryan Ware.
Certainly was. We have no idea what happened to the number 6. They came to a stop in Redgate, and they eventually got that car going again. I noticed they were off the racetrack. Don't know if that was contact, fuel related, what have you, but they did eventually get the number 6 across the line. Lev Stevenson, the man they call the Fat Stig, trying to get one more position on Ware here. Remember, Ware was spun after the pit stops were completed a little bit ago. Les Stevenson looking right behind him, but I don't think he's going to be given a line here, trying to get everything off the last corner sliding, but Ware will beat out Stevenson for P12. Everybody coming across the line. There is the number 6 car, Dominicus, stopped there. Dylan Smith in the 25. That is the winner. Wait, was that the winner? What happened here in the end? Yeah, that was the winner. Dylan Smith, the Blacksmith racing car, does win it in AM with some last lap drama that saw Kevin Boss have some sort of issue, a spin maybe perhaps, that will give them P2 for the day. But my goodness, Phillips wins another race. They have a commanding lead in the championship. Wild Things doing absolute bits here today again. What an incredible race. All kicked off in that final 10 minutes as well.
Yeah, just as you think it's all over, Jesse, it kind of rears its head once again. Of course, Wild Things taking your round 2 victory with Harry Phillips in the traditional blue and pink coloured number 26. Martin Lawrence for Connection Loss Racing takes your 2nd position. Jordan Daly in the 197, just Daly. And I'm being told in my ears, apparently we have a replay here of Kevin Boss. Let's see what happened. Focus your eyes to the blue and white car. Comes through the old hairpin. Big slide. Off to driver's right. Didn't even dip it in the grass, Jesse. Just accelerated too early on the curb, and the Maserati just not enjoying that. And Kevin Boss, unfortunately, has his 2nd round win taken away from him by driver error.
Well, I mentioned earlier on in the broadcast, about halfway through, we saw a couple of cars flirting with spinning it in that particular fashion. And I said exactly that. The later you get into this race, the more treacherous the curbs, the AstroTurf, and the felt become running offline, and it becomes less and less recoverable. That's exactly what you saw in the biggest of ways, depriving Kevin Boss of a 2nd win.
Yeah, not good. It's, he'll be beating himself up all week about that one. And, come round 3 next week, hopefully gets himself in a right mental phase in order to, fight back again on a 2nd AM win, should we say, for our very own Kevin Boss. Just a quick rundown of the calendar. If you are curious, of course, we do run every Monday regularly. So round 3 next week will take us to Kyalami. Round 4 on May 1st will be held at Kevin's home track of Zandvoort, should we say. And Harry Phillips with a very spectacular in-lap, trying to outdo his teammate Dom Healy, should we say, with the Scandinavian flicks of the Maserati. No traction control, no ABS. Look at the angle, Jesse. Through turn 8 he goes, absolutely hanging the rear end out. It's great to see, especially on the worn set of Pirelli slicks. Before round 5 finalizes stateside at Laguna Seca for May 8th. And this car down the corkscrew probably is going to be a bit of a handful.
There's no way he does this.
It's crazy. It's crazy scenes right now, and Wild Things living up to their name, getting plenty of screen time with their driving. Just look at the switchback coming down to the hairpin before he hangs it all the way sideways around the Melbourne hairpin and nearly stacks it in the wall. But great to see from this team indeed. And of course, none of this would have been possible without the drivers, of course, signing up and you guys at home watching the broadcast. So we do thank you very much for sticking sticking around. And of course, if you are new to us here at RCI TV, we would appreciate a subscription, a like button, the bell icon. And of course, we are now double streaming over to Twitch and YouTube. So head on over to Twitch to drop us a follow on there and help us grow that side of the broadcast. And of course, down below, you can find all the links for all of our partners and social medias as well, including AK Esports, Driver61.com, Fanatec, DigitalMotorsports.com, and lastly, Go Setups. But what a wonderful race it has been. I'm so sad that we couldn't bring you round one at Silverstone, but I think we more than made up for it today, Jesse, with round two here at Donington.
Well, I watched race one. I was a steward for that race, of course, and it was a decent race, but it was nothing in comparison to this. More action than you could ever want. This race was a highlight of the season for me, and just incredible scenes here. Non-stop action. You had Dom Healy and Jordan Daly going back and forth the entire race. All the top 10 positions were up for grabs. Nobody realistically took themselves out of it throughout the course. We had last lap drama. What more could you possibly have asked for?
Yeah, absolutely. Ticked kind of every box on what would have been a perfect race, I think, had Kevin Boss taken honours as well. But, great to see all the drivers putting in 110% effort, especially with the tricky machinery around them, and a relatively calm steward's report, I would say, from the guys in the box tonight. So great to see, and kudos to all of you if you are watching back the broadcast. I know some of you do enjoy that aspect of it as well. But for now, it is, of course, going to be time for myself, John Dalton, to sign off. Alongside me has been Jesse Lee, and behind the camera, as we've blown the dust off him, it is Christian Stricker, and hopefully he hasn't been too rusty, and the pictures have been wonderful. But we'd like to thank you for dropping in, and of course, in the ears, sign up for Night Owl. And briefly as we sign off, actually, Kevin Boss has just run into the box, very hot and sweaty indeed. Kevin Boss, what happened?
I wish you'd just do the outro and not...
Should we do the outro?
I thought I'd just come in for some race chat.
You've been collared.
Oh my goodness. No cameras, no autographs. Go sign up for Night Owl. Night Owl signups are open now. Season 13 of that championship. All of our other championships other than the Maserati Cup are on hiatus. Keep in mind, you can join the Maserati Cup. We're 30 plus strong here today, but we can add more to the racetrack. Mid-season signups, go do your pre-queue this week. We'll see you next Monday for round number 3. Obviously, the Night Owl season hasn't started yet. Starts in 2 weeks. More than enough time to get involved if you want to race on a Saturday night. We're going to let Kevin Boss cool off a little bit. John, take us out.
Yeah, certainly so. Kevin Boss, of course, cooling off. And from myself, John Dalton, from Jesse Lee, Christian Stricker, and Kevin Boss, it's been a wonderful evening. And I just want to remind you, update 1.9 Wednesday, we are hosting a few events in the evening. So if you want more details of that, head on over to our Discord where you can get involved with us here at RCI. And I, for one, will probably be showing my face in them as well. Partner. So, from myself, John Dalton, from Jesse Lee, from Christian Stricker, and from a late arriving Kevin Boss, we bid you farewell. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the week. And we hope to see you next week when we head to Kyalami for round 3 of the Maserati Cup.